You ever sit and look up at the sky and ask, why? Why do the innocent suffer? Why do children cry out in terror while the so-called powerful play politics with their lives? Why does the ground shake with bombs instead of mercy? Why is it that in places like Palestine, cries go up to heaven, and in silence comes back down? Now I know you've asked it. You've felt it. You've screamed it. Where is God and the truth? That question has shaken kingdoms, broken hearts, built religions. But sometimes the answer ain't in the thunder, it's in the whisper. It's not in the absence of suffering, it's in the presence of choice. Ours. Don't you dare think God's not watching. Don't you dare believe he doesn't care. But see, God is not the puppeteer. He gave us hands. He gave us hearts. He gave us a voice and the freedom to choose what to do with him. And he built bombs instead of bridges. We allowed greed, power, ego, and silence to drown out compassion. People say, well, if God is real, why doesn't he stop this? But the question we should be asking is, why aren't we? See, maybe it's not about waiting for God to act. Maybe he's waiting for us. You ever notice how the loudest silence is the one that comes after a child cries out and nobody answers? That kind of silence sticks with you. It haunts. It shakes something loose in your soul. And when you look at what's happening in Palestine, when you really look, not just glance past it on your feed, not just sigh and move on with your day, but look, you'll hear that silence. You'll hear the cries that echo through rubble. The kind that don't make the news because they ain't convenient. The kind that don't trend because they're too real. You'll hear mothers screaming their child's name, digging through cement with bare hands, bleeding through the dust, not even hoping for survival anymore, just wanting a body to bury. You'll hear a boy, maybe 8, maybe younger, call out for his father. And maybe his father is gone. Maybe he's buried right there, under the same roof they shared last night. And that boy, he don't understand politics. He don't care about power or land or who's right or wrong. All he knows is his world is gone, and nobody seems to care. You hear those cries, you feel those tears, and something inside you wants to ask, God, where are you? And that's a fair question. That's a human question. When injustice hits you like a freight train, when pain makes no sense, you turn to the heavens because that's what we do. Because deep down, we believe someone higher, someone greater must be watching. But when the sky stays silent, when the bombs keep falling and no miracle shows up in time, faith starts shaking and doubt walks in like it owns the place. But let me tell you something, that silence you feel, that absence, it ain't proof that God's not there. It's a mirror, a reflection of this. Because those children crying, they weren't asking for God to show up with lightning. They were asking for humanity to show up with a heartbeat. And that's where we've failed. See, the suffering in Palestine is not some distant tragedy that exists in a vacuum. It's a symptom of greed, of corruption, of a world so addicted to comfort that it closes its eyes to suffering it didn't cause. But just because you didn't cause it doesn't mean you're not responsible. God gave us hands so we could build, not destroy. He gave us hearts so we could feel, not ignore. He gave us each other, not so we could divide, but so we could protect one another. But instead, the world turned away. And in that turning away, in that shrug of the shoulders, in that what can I do mentality, we became part of the silence. The kind of silence that lets the innocent bleed. The kind of silence that becomes louder than the gunfire because it means no one's coming. You want to know where God is. Maybe he's right there in the boy who held his little sister's hand while their house collapsed. Maybe he's in the doctor with no supplies, using his own clothes to stop the bleeding. Maybe he's in the journalist who risked everything just to show the world the truth, even when the world didn't want to see it. God is not gone. He's not absent. He's buried in the suffering, waiting for us to dig him out, not with shovels, but with action, with justice, with love that doesn't ask for permission. But if you've trained yourself not to feel, if you've convinced yourself it's not your problem, because it's not your street, not your child, not your war, then you're helping to build the wall that keeps compassion out. And that's the real tragedy. Look, pain like this, it's not just physical, it's spiritual. It touches something sacred. And when we ignore that, when we treat lives like statistics, we lose a piece of our own soul. That boy crying out for his father is not just a victim. He's a call, a test, a reminder that humanity is one body, and when one part suffers, the whole thing should ache. But right now, we numb, we scroll, we move on, and we dare ask where God is. No, the real question is, where are we? Where are the people with courage? Where are the people who aren't afraid to feel, who aren't afraid to speak, who aren't afraid to act? God's help doesn't always come from clouds opening up and angels flying down. Sometimes it comes when a person sees injustice and says, "Not on my watch." Maybe that person's you. Maybe you're the miracle someone's been praying for. But you got to wake up. You got to let the cries in. You got to feel it. Because once you do, you can't stay the same. Now I ask you, if that child crying in the dark was your child, how loud would you scream? You know what's hard? Believing when it don't make sense. Trusting when all you see is pain. It's easy to have faith when the skies are clear, when life is good, when food's on the table and your family's safe. But what about when everything's on fire? What about when you're watching an entire people suffer, day after day, year after year, and heaven feels like it's got its phone on silent? What then? That's the kind of moment that'll test every fiber of your soul. That's the moment when you start to wonder if maybe God just isn't there, or if he is, maybe he stopped caring. And let me tell you something. You're not weak for feeling that way. You're not broken because you asked why. That question has lived in the hearts of prophets, preachers, mothers, warriors. Because when pain knocks loud enough, even the strongest of us look up and ask, "Why aren't you stopping this?" But let's slow that down. Let's sit in that question for a moment. We think because God is all-powerful, all-knowing, that he should automatically intervene when evil strikes. Like he should step in like some heavenly firefighter and put out every flame of injustice the second it lights up. But that's not how this works. That's not what free will is. And see, we don't get to ask for freedom and then demand rescue every time we misuse it. God doesn't micromanage evil. He doesn't pull strings on human choices like we're puppets. He gave us freedom, real freedom. And with that freedom came power. Power to choose, power to act, power to protect, power to destroy. And for generations, people have used that power not to heal, but to harm. And then we blame God for what we allowed. Now, I'm not saying that makes the pain okay. I'm not saying the suffering is justified. I'm saying the absence of a miracle doesn't mean the absence of God. It means we need to look in the right places. Because see, we keep looking for God in the thunder, in the dramatic, in the burning bush or the parted sea. We want fire from the sky, something we can point at and say, there he is. But God, he moves different. Sometimes he's quiet. Sometimes he's still. Sometimes he's in the places we refuse to look, in the grief, in the struggle, in the defiance of a child still holding on to hope with nothing left. We want him to act, but maybe the real problem is we don't recognize him when he does. Maybe he's in the teacher who keeps showing up at the bombed-out school, trying to give those kids just a one day of normal. Maybe he's in the neighbor sharing her last piece of bread. Maybe he's in the father wrapping his arms around his children, whispering, "We're going to get through this," even though he's breaking inside. See, we've been taught that God is loud. But real faith knows God is often quiet. And if we only look for him in the noise, we're going to miss him every time he moves in the silence. It's like this: you ever watch someone hold on to faith even when their whole world's falling apart? That's not delusion. That's power. That's a belief deeper than logic. That's a soul that's seen darkness and still chooses to believe there's a light on the other side. And that kind of faith, it doesn't come from comfort. It comes from the fire. It's forged in the fire. So when people ask, why isn't God helping Palestine? I ask back, what makes you so sure he's not? Because maybe, just maybe, we're so focused on what hasn't happened, we're blind to what is. We're waiting for the mountain to move, but we don't see the people still standing. We don't see the ones who haven't given up, who still pray, who still fight for dignity, who still show up again and again with nothing but their humanity and their faith. That's God, right there in the resilience, in the refusal to be erased. But don't misunderstand. That doesn't mean the silence is okay. That doesn't mean we accept it. No, what it means is God gave us the ability to break it. We want him to move. Then we have to move. If we want God's presence felt, we have to make space for him in our choices, in our actions, in our courage. We are not abandoned. We are entrusted. So before you question God's role in all this, take a hard look at ours. Maybe God's waiting for us to be the miracle we've been praying for. Now I ask you, if God's not showing up the way you expected, are you showing up the way he intended? There's a moment that comes when the pain is so loud, so sharp, so relentless, that it no longer feels like pain. It just becomes normal. You ever been there? Where the hurt stops surprising you? Where every day you wake up to more loss, more silence, more injustice, and your soul just goes quiet? That's not healing. That's survival. That's what people in Palestine live with, and the world. The world has grown used to watching it like a tragic TV show that never ends. A scroll, a clip, a caption, then nothing. But here's the part we don't like to admit. When we say, God, why are you silent? We have to face the reality that maybe God isn't the only one being silent. Maybe we are. Maybe the silence we feel from above is just reflecting the silence that's happening right here. Because silence, real silence, doesn't just come from the absence of sound. It comes from the absence of truth. And truth has a way of making people uncomfortable. See, we like comfort. We like peace. But the kind that doesn't cost us anything. We like stories with heroes and villains, clean and simple. But the truth is layered, messy, inconvenient. And when it challenges the systems we've been taught to trust, suddenly we don't want to hear it anymore. But truth doesn't care about convenience. It don't care about borders, alliances, or PR. It stands. And right now, the truth is standing in the rubble, holding a baby that didn't make it, asking the world, do you see me yet? We say we want peace, but there can be no peace without truth. Not real peace. Not the kind that lasts. Because truth is what gives peace its foundation. Without it, what we call peace is just quiet oppression. It's a calm built on fear. It's a silence that lets the powerful sleep well while the powerless bleed quietly. You can't build justice on a lie. You can't call it a conflict when it's occupation. You can't call it self-defense when one side has F-16s and the other's burying children with their bare hands. That's not equal. That's not fair. And that sure as hell isn't peace. But here's what happens. The world starts spinning these narratives, and over time, people start believing them. It's too complicated, they say. It's been going on for years. And just like that, truth gets buried under opinions, politics, and convenience. And while we debate, people die. While we argue over language, bombs fall on schools. While we stay neutral, injustice wins. There comes a point when neutrality becomes a choice. And when injustice is this loud, staying neutral is just choosing the side of the oppressor with softer words. We weren't created to be neutral in the face of evil. We weren't designed to be comfortable with injustice. That ache you feel in your chest when you see those images, that's not weakness. That's not guilt. That's a God's voice whispering, this is not right. A truth demands something from you. It asks you to look closer, to listen deeper, to stop scrolling past the pain and start carrying some of it. It asks you to speak when it's risky, to stand when it's easier to sit, to say no more, even when everyone around you is saying, stay out of it. That the truth is, the people in Palestine aren't asking for pity. They're not asking to be rescued. They're asking to be seen, to be heard, to be treated like their lives matter. And that's not political. That's not controversial. That's human. A God gave us truth for a reason. Not so we could hide it when it's uncomfortable, but so we could live by it. So we could stand in it. Because when you stand in truth, you're not standing alone. You're standing with every soul that ever dared to say, I see the pain, I name it. I won't ignore it. That's where healing begins. That's where justice takes root. So no, God's silence isn't the problem. Our silence is, and the only way to break it is to speak, not just with words, but with choices, with action, with compassion that doesn't look for permission. Truth is not a weapon, it's a light. And the world has been in the dark for far too long. Now I ask you, if the truth cost you your comfort, would you still speak it? You know, one of the most dangerous things we ever misunderstood about life is thinking freedom was just a gift. Like it came with no weight, no consequences. Like God handed it to us wrapped in a bow and said, here you go, do whatever you want. And then just walked away smiling. Nah, that ain't how it works. Freedom ain't just a blessing. It's a responsibility, a heavy one. One that comes with blood, with choice, with consequences that stretch far beyond what we see. We keep asking why God is letting this happen to Palestine. Why he's not stepping in to stop the suffering. Why he's not shutting down the missiles and silencing the tanks. But the real question isn't why God's not moving. It's why we're moving in the wrong direction. Why are we using our freedom to hurt, to hoard, to oppress, to ignore? Why are the people with power so quick to exploit it, and the people with empathy so quick to stay silent? Let me tell you what God really gave us. He gave us choice. Choice to build peace or to provoke war. To speak up or to shut down. To lift others or to step on their backs to get ahead. And every time we choose selfishness, every time we turn our heads from suffering and call it, not my problem, we're not just exercising freedom, we're abusing it. You can't scream about injustice while staying comfortable in complicity. You can't demand miracles from heaven while using the tools God gave you to remain passive. He gave us the power to make things right. He gave us the ability to see wrong and say, enough. But that power is being used to divide instead of unite, to destroy instead of protect. And then we have the nerve to wonder why the world looks the way it does. This right here. What's happening in Palestine? This is not divine punishment. This is human failure. This is what it looks like when free will is used to pursue power instead of peace. When politics become more sacred than people. When borders are valued more than babies. When fear is more profitable than compassion. God gave us the tools. He gave us wisdom. He gave us discernment. But most importantly, He gave us each other. And yet, we keep choosing sides instead of choosing each other. We keep choosing silence instead of truth. We keep choosing comfort over courage. And look, I get it. Courage ain't easy. Speaking up might cost you something. It might make you unpopular. It might mess with your career, your image, your friendships. But let me ask you something. What's the cost of not speaking? What's the cost of watching this suffering and saying nothing? Because whether you admit it or not, that silence, it stacks up. It has weight. And eventually, it becomes part of the system that allows this kind of cruelty to continue. So yes, we have freedom. But freedom without responsibility is chaos. And too many of us have mistaken as comfort for as peace. Just because your house isn't shaking doesn't mean the world is okay. Just because your children are safe doesn't mean the world is safe. And just because you didn't fire the missile doesn't mean your hands are clean if you watched it fall and said nothing. That boy in Gaza who lost his whole family in a flash, he didn't choose that. That mother who had to wrap her baby in a shroud made from her own clothes, she didn't choose that. But someone did, and others allowed it. And too many turned their backs. That's what we've done with our freedom. That's what happens when power goes unchecked by love. But see, it's not too late. It's not over. We still got a choice. Right here, right now. We can choose to care. We can choose to listen. We can choose to act, because the same freedom that was used to destroy can still be used to rebuild, to protect, to heal. God didn't abandon us. He trusted us. And it's time we stop betraying that trust. You want to honor God? Don't just pray, participate. Don't just speak or serve. Don't just feel. Fight for those who can't fight for themselves. Because if we all chose to do that, if we all took our freedom seriously, maybe this world wouldn't need so many miracles. Now I ask you, what are you doing with the freedom God gave you? There's a moment that comes when the pain is so loud, so sharp, so relentless that it no longer feels like pain. It just becomes normal. You ever been there? Where the hurt stops surprising you. Where every day you wake up to more loss, more silence, more injustice, and your soul just goes quiet. That's not healing. That's survival. That's what people in Palestine live with. And the world has grown used to watching it like a tragic TV show that never ends. A scroll, a clip, a caption, then nothing. But here's the part we don't like to admit. When we say, God, why are you silent? We have to face the reality that maybe God isn't the only one being silent. Maybe we are. Maybe the silence we feel from above is just reflecting the silence that's happening right here. Because silence, real silence, doesn't just come from the absence of sound. It comes from the absence of truth. And truth has a way of making people uncomfortable. See, we like comfort, we like peace, but the kind that doesn't cost us anything. We like stories with heroes and villains, clean and simple. But the truth is layered, messy, inconvenient. And when it challenges the systems we've been taught to trust, suddenly we don't want to hear it anymore. But truth doesn't care about convenience. It don't care about borders, alliances, or PR. It stands. And right now, the truth is standing in the rubble, holding a baby that didn't make it, asking the world, do you see me yet? We say we want peace. But there can be no peace without truth. Not real peace. Not the kind that lasts. Because truth is what gives peace its foundation. Without it, what we call peace is just quiet oppression. It's a calm built on fear. It's a silence that lets the powerful sleep well while the powerless bleed quietly. You can't build justice on a lie. You can't call it a conflict when it's occupation. You can't call it self-defense when one side has F-16s and the other's burying children with their bare hands. That's not equal. That's not fair. And that sure as hell isn't peace. But here's what happens. The world starts spinning these narratives, and over time, people start believing them. It's too complicated. They say, it's been going on for years. And just like that, truth gets buried under opinions, politics, and convenience. And while we debate, people die. While we argue over language, bombs fall on schools. While we stay neutral, injustice wins. There comes a point when neutrality becomes a choice. And when injustice is this loud, staying neutral is just choosing the side of the oppressor with softer words. We weren't created to be neutral in the face of evil. We weren't designed to be comfortable with injustice. That ache you feel in your chest when you see those images, that's not weakness. That's not guilt. That's God's voice whispering, "This is not right. Thy truth demands something from you." It asks you to look closer, to listen deeper, to stop scrolling past the pain and start carrying some of it. It asks you to speak when it's risky, to stand when it's easier to sit, to say no more, even when everyone around you is saying, stay out of it. The truth is, the people in Palestine aren't asking for pity. They're not asking to be rescued. They're asking to be seen, to be heard, to be treated like their lives matter. And that's not political. That's not controversial. That's human. God gave us truth for a reason. Not so we could hide it when it's uncomfortable, but so we could live by it, so we could stand in it. Because when you stand in truth, you're not standing alone. You're standing with every soul that ever dared to say, "Fess, I see the pain. I name it. I won't ignore it." That's where healing begins. That's where justice takes root. So no, God's silence isn't the problem. Our silence is. And the only way to break it is to speak, not just with words, but with choices, with action, with compassion that doesn't look for permission. Truth is not a weapon, it's a light. And the world has been in the dark for far too long. Now I ask you, if the truth cost you your comfort, would you still speak it? You ever notice how we've been taught to associate God with comfort? That if He's with you, life should be smooth. No war, no hunger, no struggle, just blessings on blessings. But that's not how it works. That's not how faith works. See, some of the deepest faith doesn't grow in calm. It grows in chaos. It grows in the middle of war zones, refugee camps, prison cells, and hospital rooms. It grows in Palestine, where people wake up each day not knowing if they'll see tomorrow, but still they pray, still they hope, still they believe. That kind of faith, that's not weak, that's not naive, that's unbreakable. And it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Maybe God's greatest miracles aren't in the parting of seas or the healing of the blind. Maybe it's in the human spirit that refuses to be crushed. Maybe it's in a child smiling through dust and smoke. Maybe it's in a mother, heart shattered, still singing lullabies to her baby to drown out the bombs. Maybe the real miracle is when someone chooses to believe, even when the world gives them every reason not to. See, there's something powerful about people who praise in the storm. Something holy about those who say, "Even if I die here, I will die standing. I will die holding on to my dignity. I will not let the darkness steal my light." That's not weakness. That's divine strength. And you better believe God sees that. He sees it in the quiet moments, in the tears no one else sees, in the nights when fear tries to choke out faith and somehow that person still whispers a prayer. That kind of faith shakes heaven. That kind of endurance echoes louder than any sermon. Because it's not based on comfort, it's based on trust. We keep thinking that if God were really there, He'd remove the pain. But sometimes God doesn't remove the fire. He joins you in it. He doesn't stop the storm. He strengthens you to walk through it. And when you come out the other side, scarred but still standing, people will look at you and say, "Baff, how did you survive?" And your answer will be, "I didn't walk alone." That's the thing about suffering. It strips everything away. It exposes what's real. And if your faith survives it, that faith is pure. It's not borrowed. It's not shallow. It's forged, refined in flames. Unshakable. That's what I see in the people of Palestine. That's what I see in every person who chooses humanity over hate, who keeps believing even when the world goes quiet. People who still say, "God is with me," not because their life is easy, but because they've seen Him move in the impossible. They've seen Him show up in the resilience, in the compassion of strangers, in the courage to keep going. See, we want God to end the suffering. But sometimes His answer is deeper than an ending. Sometimes His answer is endurance. Sometimes the miracle isn't outside the fire, it's through it. And if you can survive what was meant to destroy you, if you can keep your soul intact when everything else is falling apart, you become the miracle. So let's stop thinking God's only in the escape. Sometimes He's in the endurance, in the strength to stay human in a world trying to turn you cold, in the decision to keep loving even when you've been shown so much hate, in the hope that rises again and again, no matter how many times it's knocked down. And that's the faith we need now. A faith that doesn't run from the dark, but lights a candle right in the middle of it. That's how we honor those who suffer. That's how we carry their pain with dignity, by not letting their faith die in vain. Now, I ask you, when the fire comes, will your faith survive the heat? Sometimes we forget that justice isn't just a courtroom word. It's not just tied up in laws and verdicts and governments. It's a heartbeat. It's a calling. It's the natural cry of the soul when it witnesses something wrong. And you don't have to be a judge or a politician or some world leader to feel it. All you got to be is human. Ici, we throw around the word justice like it's a slogan. But real justice, it costs something. It calls you to move, to show up. It doesn't live in hashtags. It lives in the space between knowing and doing, between hearing about someone's suffering and deciding you won't stay quiet about it. Because if you see oppression and you look away, that's not neutrality, that's betrayal. We've reached a point in the world where silence has become a currency. People trade it for comfort, for reputation, for not having to deal with the backlash. But silence in the face of injustice, it's not neutral. It's dangerous. It becomes the soil where cruelty grows unchecked. You look at Palestine and you see a land crying out for justice, crying out loud. But what echoes back from most of the world is silence. Strategic silence, political silence, comfortable silence. And we keep wondering why God doesn't act, why he doesn't bring the scales back into balance. But maybe God has already placed the answer inside of us. Because justice, real justice, has always started with people, ordinary people. People who refuse to accept that cruelty should ever be normalized. That suffering should be politicized. That pain should be debated before it's believed. Those are the voices that spark change, that ignite movement, that hold the powerful accountable, that tell the broken, you are not alone. But justice can't be driven by popularity. It has to be driven by principle. You can't wait for it to be trending. You can't wait until it's safe. Because by the time the world is ready to speak, it's already too late for the ones who needed saving. You want to know if your heart's in the right place. Look at how it responds to pain that's not your own. Look at how it reacts when you see injustice that doesn't touch your doorstep. Do you scroll past it? Do you change the subject? Or do you lean in and say, this matters? Because justice isn't just about fixing the system. It's about fixing the soul of a world that's forgotten how to feel. It's about seeing children bombed and not needing a political explanation before you grieve. It's about watching a father carry his lifeless daughter through the rubble and knowing that silence is not an option. And if you think your voice is too small to make a difference, let me tell you, oppression as loves that lie. Injustice as thrives on that lie. Because if it can convince you to stay quiet, it's already won. But history shows us time and again, it doesn't take millions to spark justice. It takes one voice refusing to bow, one heart refusing to go numb, one soul choosing truth, no matter the cost. You don't gotta have all the answers to stand up for what's right. You just need the courage to say, I see you, I hear you, and I won't ignore your pain. And when enough of us do that, that silence that once protected oppression, it begins to break. That's how justice starts. Not with policies, but with people. Not with perfection, but with compassion. So if you're waiting to be qualified to speak up, stop waiting. If you're waiting for permission to care, you've already got it. God gave us the ability to feel, to act, to speak for those who've been silenced. Don't waste that gift. Because when you fight for justice, you're not just fighting for someone else. You're fighting for the kind of world your soul was created for. Now I ask you, when justice calls, will your silence answer, or will you? They always say, time heals all wounds, but tell me, how do you heal when the wound keeps getting ripped open day after day? How do you move on when the air still smells like smoke, when the screams are still fresh, when the people responsible never even acknowledged your pain? Healing can't start without acknowledgement. You can't stitch a wound shut while the knife's still in it. That's the reality Palestine lives with. We talk about healing like it's some quiet, peaceful process. But real healing starts in chaos. It starts when truth is faced, not hidden. It starts when the world looks pain in the eye and says, I see you, I was blind before, but not anymore. You can't heal what you keep denying. You can't heal while the oppressor still holds the pen that writes the history. See, healing isn't forgetting. It's not pretending things are okay. It's not sitting at tables of peace while the house next door is still burning. Healing is justice. Healing is repair. Healing is when the world stops acting like some lives matter more than others. And until that happens, asking the oppressed to move on is just another form of violence. And let me be real, healing doesn't mean weakness. It doesn't mean letting go of the fight. It doesn't mean rolling over and accepting loss as the final word. It means choosing to carry your scars with dignity. It means saying, I'm broken, but I'm still standing. It's surviving a war and still being able to love. Still being able to hope. Still believing that peace is possible, even when peace feels a million miles away. That's what they don't understand about the people of Palestine. They think these folks are stuck in the past. But the truth is, they're holding on to memory because the world refuses to acknowledge it. They're holding on to history because their history keeps getting erased. And memory is resistance. Because when you remember the names of those they tried to erase, when you speak about the towns that were flattened, the voices that were silenced, you keep them alive. Healing also looks like reclaiming your story, not letting it be rewritten by those who watched you suffer and stayed quiet. It's taking back your narrative, saying, this is who we are, this is what we've endured, and this is why we won't stop speaking. That kind of healing is louder than any propaganda. It's stronger than any wall or weapon. But we all play a part in that process. If you're on the outside looking in, don't just say, I wish them peace. Ask yourself, what am I doing to make that peace possible? Am I spreading truth, or am I just reposting whatever's trending? Am I educating myself, or am I clinging to the comfortable version of the story? Because healing also means accountability, and that ain't easy. Nobody wants to admit they were wrong. Nobody wants to accept that they were silent when it mattered most. But healing demands truth, not just from the powerful, but from all of us. If we want a different world, we have to be different people. We can't heal while holding on to our biases. We can't create peace while protecting false narratives. It starts with humility, with honesty, with being willing to sit in the discomfort long enough to grow from it. Look, I'm not saying healing is a straight road. It's not. It's messy, it's slow, it's painful. But it is possible, even after the bombs, even after the betrayals, even after generations of suffering. It's possible, but only if the world stops pretending the wound isn't there. So don't tell Palestine to move on. Tell the world to wake up, to own what it allowed, to see what it ignored. Because healing begins when the truth is seen, when justice is pursued, and when dignity is restored. It's not about pretending the pain never happened. It's about honoring it so deeply, so honestly, that it never has to be repeated again. Now I ask you, will you be part of the silence that delays healing, or the truth that helps begin it? They say the world is watching, but watching ain't enough. Watching without action is just witnessing. It's just observation. And right now, Palestine doesn't need more spectators. It needs advocates. It needs courage. It needs a world that doesn't just look, but moves. There comes a point where you got to decide, what does my belief in God really mean if it doesn't move me to stand for the oppressed? What does my faith mean if it stops at prayer but never pushes me toward justice? Faith without action, that's just performance. It's empty noise. The people in Palestine don't need performance. They need partnership. They need the world to stop whispering prayers and start shouting truth. See, we keep waiting for someone else to fix it, for governments, for leaders, for organizations. But the truth is, if you're waiting for the powerful to do what's right just because it's right, you'll be waiting forever. The systems weren't built to serve justice. They were built to protect themselves. That's why the responsibility falls on us, on people with conscience, on people with conviction. And no, maybe you don't have influence like a president or a prime minister. But your voice, it still matters. Your choices, they still count. Because change doesn't start from the top, it starts from the ground. From people who refuse to stay silent. From people who say, not in my name. Say every time you speak up, every time you share truth, every time you refuse to let propaganda rewrite reality, you're not just helping Palestine, you're helping the soul of the world. Because this isn't just about land, it's about humanity. It's about whether or not we're still capable of compassion, of truth, of standing for what's right when it's hard. You ever wonder why so many people choose to look away? It's not always hate. Sometimes it's fear. Fear of backlash. Fear of being wrong. Fear of losing comfort. But let me tell you something. If your comfort depends on someone else's silence, that's not comfort. That's complicity. And you can't call yourself a person of faith while staying silent when innocent blood is spilled. God didn't put us here to be passive. He didn't bless us with breath just so we could sit in safety while others suffocate. He put us here to be light, to confront the dark, to walk into the fire when no one else will. And maybe, just maybe, you're not powerless. You're just quiet. Maybe God already gave you the power to make a difference, and He's waiting on you to stop playing small. The question is no longer, where is God? The question is, where are you? Where are the artists painting the truth? Where are the writers telling the real story? Where are the teachers teaching history that hasn't been sanitized? Where are the religious leaders calling out injustice from the pulpits? Not just preaching about heaven, but fighting for dignity here on earth, because this is where your faith has to show up, not just in prayers, but in presence. not just in hope, but in help. And help doesn't always mean money or status. Sometimes help is refusing to believe the lie. Sometimes help is standing next to the truth, even when the world tells you to sit down. The people of Palestine, they're not asking for pity. They're asking for allies. They're asking for a global conscience that doesn't bend to politics or fear. And if that conscience starts with you, then don't wait. Be the one that breaks the pattern. Be the one who says, enough. Because if God put breath in your lungs and truth in your heart, then he's already given you what you need to take a stand. Now's the time, not tomorrow, not when it's trending again. Now I ask you, will you be a spectator or a soldier for truth? So now you've heard it, truth without sugar, pain without filter, faith without fluff. We've walked through the silence, the questions, the fire, and the faith. We've seen how God shows up, not always in thunder, not always in rescue, but sometimes in resilience, in resistance, in the refusal to let injustice write the final word. But the truth is, none of this matters if you walk away unchanged, if you feel stirred but never speak, if you nod but never act. Because faith without movement is just noise. Compassion without action is just decoration. And right now, the world doesn't need decoration, it needs disruption. So I leave you with this, not a command, not a guilt trip, but a mirror. What do you see when you look at Palestine? What do you feel when you hear those cries? And more importantly, what will you do with what you now know? Because the next time someone asks, where is God? Maybe the answer is in what you choose to do next. Now I ask you, what side of history will your silence write?